that sense of wanting or believing in a brighter future, finding connection within me with that divine spark in the outside, in nature especially.
Every small act is a contribution, being better to myself and those around me. I think there's a huge value in that.
It's a little bit in my relationships to see where am I, where is my heart, where do I speak from, and what can I do to both learn from it myself and maybe give something different, a different action back that was there before.
Hello, dear ones. Welcome back to another episode of the All That We Are podcast. And this is a rather special one that we created on our retreat when we were in the Forest of Dean just a couple of weeks ago. The retreat was a gorgeous, nourishing experience around this theme of remembering. And we were there in beautiful ritual together and community, and really had this opportunity to shift some deep energies and open up new pathways of being. And I definitely have been feeling that in my life since we gathered together. We have another opportunity to be together in person. This time it's going to be in Devon very soon, the 5th and the 6th of July. And Devon is where I have been living most of the time the last 4 years, and have also been coming here now regularly for around 7-8 years. And these lands are incredibly beautiful and powerful. And I feel really happy that we're drawing together people that are here in Devon or want to come and experience this together. And we'll be in this beautiful riverside venue where on the Friday night we have a live podcast with Anthea Lawson, Helena Norberg Hodge, and Jay Spencer Keys. And I'm really excited because we'll be exploring planetary transformation, whatever that means exactly, on a local level. And so how we work locally to create that bigger change that we know that we deserve, and exploring the dynamics between concepts of big change and the realities of our day-to-day lives and education and food systems and the ways that we actually live and care for each other. Then on the Saturday, we'll be having a day retreat, and there will be circles and embodiment practices, meditation practices, energetic activations. It will be just a day of body, mind, soul, community nourishment. And so I would love to share that with you. If you feel to join us, we will be keeping this theme of remembering because it's such a potent one. And the invitation in remembering is to really remember the truth of who you are and why you even came here. That there's something that you have to give to this world that is so unique to you and is a perfect piece of a bigger puzzle. And so what is it to really activate that? We also have Soul Space coming up for all members. So please do join the All That We Are membership Presence Collective to get more connected with the community and to keep supporting this work, which I can't tell you is really, really, really appreciated and very much needed in these times. And the Reclaim Your Intuition live journey has been postponed slightly, but there'll be more concrete information on the dates of that next week, but it will be this summer. So if you would like to be part of a live cohort of going through this incredible course that takes you on a journey of reclaiming your intuition and coming into a deeper relationship with the unseen worlds and yourself through ritual and games and activations, then stay tuned for the exact dates of when the only live cohort will be. So there'll be a group and we'll have weekly check-ins along the journey to ask more questions and to share in the experience. So I'm really looking forward to hosting that. In this special episode, we gather in a circle with 3 of the beautiful people that were on the retreat. The others were all there holding space, but didn't feel like sharing. So you're going to hear from Sally, Vanessa, and Chris as we explore remembering our shared humanity. And it's really an invitation for us all to come together in community and to unveil collective wisdom as themes that emerge are collective care, community building, diverse ways of how we can build a better world, activism and burnout, and kindness versus cancel culture. as I was feeling into this, I was actually listening to an old episode back from 2019, episode 57 with Kamal Abayomi. And in that, I was talking about activism as an activation of our truth in the world. And I feel like that is the invitation of remembering. Like, how is it that we want to be bringing the truth of who we are in our souls out into this world? The three amazing, beautiful souls that you will hear from in this podcast are Chris, who lives in Pembrokeshire and now works in events. He has experience working with young people and has been involved in some activism over the years. Vanessa Englert, who works in organization development and is a researcher at the overlap of management and spiritual studies. With her research, she contributes to answering how organizations can be designed to serve humankind to live their full selves. As an enabling consultant, she creates being spaces for her clients to support them in their organizational development on individual, team, and structural levels. Her daily dedicated yoga practice in turn nourishes her to show up and to contribute her part in all areas of life. And you'll hear from Dr. Sally Zlotowitz, who is a clinical and community psychologist and CEO of the charity Art Against Knives in London. She is passionate about addressing the intersections of social justice and mental health. She is co-founder of Psychologists for Social Change and the Housing and Mental Health Network. Sally was the chair of the British Psychological Society's Community Psychology section for many years and is co-editor of the Palgrave Handbook of Innovative Community and Clinical Psychologies. Outside of work and activism, Sally is committed to nature-based spirituality. And so through this, you also get a flavor of the kind of people that are part of this community and that come on our retreats and events, which are open to all. But there are these shared values and these shared ways of experiencing the world that connect us here. In this conversation called Remembering Us, Collective Care, we explore the question, how do we remember and cultivate our shared humanity? I do hope that you really enjoy this one, and I look forward to connecting with you all more in all of the ways so we can celebrate all that we are. Welcome to All That We Are with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing and envisioning, we create the futures of our wildest dreams. And we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible. Welcome, everyone. We are in the magical forest of Dean, sitting in a pyramid structure, looking out onto forest and rose gardens, having just spent an extraordinary weekend together in this space of remembering. A few of us here that are part of this retreat are going to share with you all. And the rest of the group is here listening, because we're here in this circle. And we've been sharing together what is the right theme. What is it that we want to share? And what's come alive is an acknowledgement that we all want there to be a more beautiful future. We all care about what's possible for humanity and for our interspecies relationships, nature, living in a way that nurtures the soul and creates more equality and space for that which is important. And we're going to be exploring what that means to us right now, and a little bit around how we've come to that in our own journeys. I'm going to start by inviting you, Chris, to share.
Thanks, Amisha. I was involved in activism, sort of climate and refugee causes for a few years. I didn't get involved until quite late in life, when I suddenly felt a calling to maybe make a difference in the world. I have some great memories of the people I met and the actions and campaigns I was involved in. But I guess more recently I'm looking at the fact that I'm not involved anymore and what that journey's been like. I definitely became exhausted by my activism. I think that's a really common experience. And for me, on my journey, part of the reason for that exhaustion was the place where the energy for the activism came from. And I began to see that what was coming up and what was driving me was it certainly in part my own hurts and my own traumas, and that's an exhausting place to be constantly working from, especially given the constraints most of us face of having to make a living on the side, as it were. And so more recently I've really focused more on looking after myself and mending the relationship with myself. I think after being burnt out through activism, what I was left with was the realization that actually part of the problem was my relationship with myself. I feel now that the relationship with myself is much better. And part of what I've wanted to explore this weekend is, does that mean that I no longer have the energy for activism, or does it mean my idea of activism's changed? Learning to be kinder to myself has made me more careful with my time and my energy. And so in some ways that's left less time for what you might call traditional activism. We did talk earlier about whether activism that has to sort of replicate the kind of structures and that it's fighting against to be taken seriously, whether that can really ever create something truly different. And I think that's a really interesting area for investigation. I do believe that every small act is a contribution also, and that I certainly feel in my life now that my relationship with myself is better, that I'm able to show up better for friends, that I have a greater capacity to care and to love for those close to me. And often that feels good, rather than being caught up in these big causes, just to be being better to myself and those around me. I think there's a huge value in that.
Thank you. My name is Vanessa. My perspective or relationship to this question starts from a view of management and spiritual practices, both as a researcher and as a practitioner. And so having been in systems, both as someone who looks at them like a researcher and as someone who lives in them, basically. And then as an academic, you're in another system. It's kind of like that Russian doll, in a system. I wanted to pick up what Amisha asked, I've heard at least, as a question of, where do I get that sense of wanting or believing in a brighter future, in a more beautiful future? For me, that is coming both from finding connection within me with something that is divine for me, with that divine spark in the outside, in nature especially, and also with people. And a practice of like emergent dialogue is something that has brought me to come together with people and actually relish in how beautiful it is to be human and what that also means and what kind of a responsibility that is. Not so much in a way that points out, okay, now, you go to this organization, contribute here, and then make that change. More in that sense of, if I reconceptualize by experience, embodying this with this group of people, what it means to be human, that gives a totally different feeling and kind of like a instant connecting with other humans, which is something that I've been missing a lot. And I feel like reconnecting gives me something that's alive. And I believe in that aliveness to actually spread, and to be just not spread, just be there, be rediscovered, because it's already there. So that is something very important, where that aliveness comes from, the reconnection with myself, my surroundings, and amongst the people that I encounter, which then leaves me a little bit like, you step out of the pool and you have droplets of water, and that every time I do this practice or I reconnect throughout my day, something stays with me in my everyday interactions, and that I can then take into, as a practitioner, researcher, whatever system basically I'm engaging with. And I really like to see this kind of small acts of change as an engaging with from a certain state of being. I think that is something that really is how I feel I can contribute, to be first, and then to engage with, and not, watch my tomato plants grow, but to be, and to engage to the outside, with the outside.
Thank you, Vanessa. My name's Sally Zlotowitz, and I am CEO of an organisation in London called Art Against Knives, and a clinical and community psychologist by background. Yeah, I definitely believe a more beautiful world is possible, and definitely have tried to spend as much of my energy as possible contributing to it, obviously always with others and collectively. And I suppose one of the first things that made me, I've bared witness to a lot of people's adversities and challenges caused by systemic oppression. But I suppose one of the first things is that my mum was a strong feminist, and in my primary school, we weren't allowed a girls' football team. And that really annoyed me and annoyed my mum and other girls. And we kind of started there and started a girls' football team. And I thought, why is that? Why that's weird that we're not allowed to have a football team. And then, now I think we can all look at where the women's England football team are compared to the men's, but enough said about that. But yeah, I think that's where it started. And then I had a deep love of trying to understand people and their stories, and loving listening to stories. So I became a psychologist and a clinical psychologist. I started as a PhD psychologist, and realized academia is not where the spirit of humanity tends to live. So I went on to become a clinical psychologist, and then started to notice how much people were being held personally responsible for their own distress, and how medicalized that system is in terms of it being false ideas around chemical imbalances and not a result of systemic oppression. And that really, along with many other psychologists before me, and many other therapists and other healers of all forms, frustrated me. And we started something called, what at that time was Psychologists Against Austerity, and then became Psychologists for Social Change, as a collective way of trying to change dominant, powerful stories around mental health, and instead replace, not necessarily fully replacing it, but bringing in these ideas of collective action, community, and the importance of community, and the importance of equality, the importance of justice in people's lives in order for them to feel well, and the importance of collective responsibility in creating those conditions for people to live well, rather than seeing people as brains to be fixed through medication. So that was a really powerful journey for me. And alongside, I was working in the field of youth violence. The prevention of violence, to me, and peace building seems like the ultimate goal we should be striving for, one of the ultimate goals. There's many. when we see what's happening led by our so-called leaders in terms of Gaza and Sudan and many other conflicts around the world, and then in the UK, young people's experiences of not feeling safe when they're in urban environments, but also in rural environments because of fear of racism, and in rural environments and in urban environments, all young people feeling unsafe because the root causes of violence, which I often shortcut to capitalism. But there's many factors, but ultimately I hold capitalism responsible and the many ways it plays out. So violence prevention is and peace building feels to me a huge contribution we can all try and make, both at that personal level, at the interpersonal level, and at the kind of greater level as best we can, through different ways that people can organise and take care of each other and collective care. But more recently, I think I've been massively humbled by how much I used to be quite very much focused on changing the external conditions, on trying to change the systems of oppression. And although I did some of the work on myself and think I'm a good person, I suppose more recently I've had to do a lot of work coming back into myself, thinking about what I hold internally around ideas of white supremacy and ideas around capitalism and what is productive in organizations and how we relate within organizations and within our own organization. And that's been a humbling process for me. And so I've come more towards thinking, how do we work? How do we look at ourselves whilst also not becoming what I have judged in the past as kind of quite self-indulgent, and the balance between that and doing the hard work, what I have always felt and experienced as the hard but important and meaningful work of activism in all its forms. And yeah, so I've kind of humbled back to that and started to center spirituality more. And now I find myself in this we've talked about it between us today, but this, where do we put our energy and how much can we put our energy into different aspects of our personal and collective well-being? And where does spirituality sit within that? Because although it transcends everything, transcends politics, it also is touched, of course, by it and our economic systems. But also it's how is spirituality engaged with people's real hardships in a meaningful way? Amisha, thank you for bringing us so many wisdoms and learnings from many teachers on that subject. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you. It's so beautiful to hear you all, and there's so much that's been shared over these days that of course isn't being shared in these moments, and those that aren't speaking into the podcast at this time. What feels alive for me in this moment, it's been really beautiful to be here and be in practices and be in ritual and be in communion with all the nature. And then today, when we start talking about this bigger kind of question of what's the relevance of all of this for, the rest of the world and our global future and all of the issues that we care about. And it's brought up that question of what's enough. And I feel really sad, actually, that we have this question, that this is the question that ends up taking up the space. How will we ever know if we've done enough? And what is it to live in a world where there's so much that isn't sitting right with my heart, with my body, with what I understand about what it means to be interconnected? And of course, it's not like we're at the beginnings of extraction culture, violent culture, but we are at a place where we're so aware of it, and we're so aware of what's happening in other parts of the world. And we're also seeing more of this culture show up in our day-to-day lives, whether it's in the quality of our food or whether it's in the lack of substance, like in our local communities sometimes, and that lack of like connection and being in it together. And so I guess that's what I really want to offer is like, what if we let go of that question of, is it enough? And know that everyone, at least that's listening to this show, in amongst all the things you could be doing with your time, that probably you're already doing more than enough, and that your care is having an impact on our future that we couldn't ever possibly know. And it feels like there is always this balance between knowing where to give money and signing petitions and showing up in different ways and using the power of our kind of vote and political kind of voice of adding our name and country onto a petition and all of it. It's all so important. But I just don't know if measuring it is important, and measuring whether or not we're doing enough, and if that's part of what leads to that sense of burnout that can happen and overwhelm. It's all part of it, like spending time in meditation and spending time in nature and eating well and being kind to those that are around us, that are in our lives, and being brave enough to transform or to face ancestral patterns that have been in our families for generations, making different choices to those that anyone that we know has ever made before us, and being brave enough to face our pain, our suffering, and also our joy. And I know that that's very different to, you know, there are a lot of people in the world, in Western culture, that are living in a way that is so tuned into the extractive culture, and that it doesn't matter what's going on anywhere else. But what I'm feeling is that if you're connected to that notion that what you do is imprinting the future, that there is a contradiction that you're kind of going to meet constantly as you do your shopping, as you make your choices, as you live your life. But even just being aware of the contradiction and caring about it is something, as well as all of the little things you can do, the picking up the litter or tending to a little bit of public space that has gone into chaos, and either bringing, you know, cleanliness to it or plants or something to reclaim those spaces. There's just so many ways. And I really also feel that bringing in the unseen and making time to connect with the waters and the trees and our bodies is all part of it. We've got such a tendency, which I feel is a colonial hangover, of judging and measuring. And what would it be to let go of that and know that, like, as one individual human, we fall short of what we would like to be so often, that so often we don't have the perfect response when someone comes to talk to us, or we don't have the perfect way that we did something, even when we knew a better way, that sometimes it's just hard to do everything in that moment, and that it's also okay. It's okay to notice and be like, oh, if that moment arrives in a different form again, I'm going to approach it differently, or I'm going to acknowledge like what it is that I need to be somewhat resourced. Because I also feel like this idea that we can't do anything, whether it's relationally or kind of in the activism world, unless we're like these fully healed, balanced, perfect beings, is also another one of these traps that stops us from just being in the messiness of it all. Because it is messy. everything is so messy. And sometimes that like being scared to move towards it or to show up somewhere in case we add to the mess. What if adding to the mess is part of the way to more beauty? Thank you for tuning in. If you are enjoying this episode, do join our membership. For a small contribution, you can be part of our community, where we deepen the conversation and offer spaces of learning and embodiment. As a member, you are a patron supporting the making of this show, keeping the episodes full length, free and accessible for all. And you receive a number of benefits, such as monthly soul space, going deeper sessions, access to our library of workshops, and discounts on all our online and in-person experiences. Our membership is what makes us able to make this show and stay advertising free in a world that is always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. Head to allthatweare.org/membership to find out more and join today. I'm going to pass back around our circle and invite more around what's already been said, and also for you to share some of the ways in which you do feel like you're able to contribute in whatever way that means for you. This is also about celebrating what we're doing. I think that's how we reclaim some of our enoughness.
Yeah, I think myself and many people I know are often driven to distraction with the "am I doing enough?" question. I suppose it's hard when things seem to be going in the other direction from where we would like them to be going, perhaps. Sometimes it feels that way. And so we can only conclude we're not doing enough. And then I remember all the things you've just said, Amisha, and it definitely helps. I think it is quite a lot for people who are trying to contribute meaningfully to social change in some way to feel like you're in battles all the time with someone or something, usually some, huge monolith. It was often unseen in a very different way, like an invisible power that has so much power that it makes it difficult to hold them to account, whether that's corporations or governments or even in some cases, obviously, individuals. So, yeah, being in battle a lot feels hard. So I guess this idea of trying to create in our own communities, I suppose for me, I feel like working at a community level and at a local level is important and is the way I can best contribute at this point in time, whether that's through the community we're trying to create with young people or in my own life, within my neighborhood or within community groups that I'm part of or would like to be part of, but trying to create those opportunities for positive culture building and different kind of culture building. But that is messy. It's really messy. And people find it tough, and I find it tough to know how to do it really well because we've not had the system works against it all the time in different ways. I'd like to celebrate, if I may take this opportunity, the whole team in our organisation, Art Against Knives. They're an incredibly special team, and the young people, I'm constantly learning from them and inspired by them. And that kind of frontline work, whether it's social work, youth work, community builders, they very rarely get celebrated properly in our culture. I just think they do incredible day-to-day work. People who don't have a job title necessarily, but are someone who just lives in their community and does loads of stuff for young people, like feeds them, lets them come into their home, has loads of people around all the time, just builds community quite because that's just what they do, and or they might have a blueprint for it from their ancestors, which is really beautiful to see. And I feel like, it's hard to find those blueprints now of community built proper village. We talked about having a village to support us, and there are people who still do that and hold that, and some of our team are those people, and many others around in our community. So I'd like to celebrate them. And I think that kind of work is crucial, whatever else you're doing. So the website, if you're interested in learning more about Art Against Knives, is www.artagainstKnives.com. But there's many other incredible youth organisations out there as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Yeah, enough. I find enough also a difficult concept to grasp, because that would mean that I have a scale, or I have a plan, I know what 100% is, so to say. So I can say it's under 100%, which I really don't. And to acknowledge that I'm not in control of this, kind of knowing what is really enough, puts me in a place of both. I feel personally kind of oh, okay, I maybe don't even have to know that, and I just do my thing here, and life being a playground for soul, and to learn, and to just, what's right in front of me, this is what I'm going to do. And if that means that I have to make a plan for 7 generations, then that's right in front of me. And so I do think ahead, but I can't be the judge of what actually is enough. I can do what feels okay on this is where I'm supposed to go, and this is what I can contribute. Sometimes also it's not a happy place. It's not always, this feels good for me to do. And so that is a good feeling. Sometimes it's really challenging. And in the ways that I feel I can contribute, and that's kind of the most basic elemental way, is in my relationships to transmute something where I feel I could either react right now, and I really would like to in a certain way, because I have a pattern, and that kind of is, a pattern is easy to do because it's already there. Or I could take a breath and see how I can actually, what's going on here, and how can I find within myself what it feels like to me is to drop into my heart and to see what comes out. And that could be also semi-patterny, or it's very different, or that's just kind of how I feel I can contribute to transmuting a certain energy that is around. And it's not even the person that I'm engaged with in that moment. It's not their fault, so to say. It's just kind of for me, that's my understanding of reality. We pick up movements and thoughts and vibes from systems, from surroundings, and enact or not enact. And so it's not really someone else. I don't know. For me, it's a little bit in my relationships to see, where am I? Where is my heart? Where do I speak from? And what can I do to both learn from it myself, and maybe give something different, a different action back that was there before, and hope that, I don't know, that's what I'm here to do. But again, I'm not really sure. And so this not knowing, you spoke about it, Chris, earlier, to be in a position of not knowing, I feel is something very advanced, to be honest, to allow myself to be I actually don't know. And this is where I'm going to stay, and then see what's going to happen. Because that is kind of how I make myself available to life, and for transformation to happen, if it wants to. Yeah, and that can be done, I feel, in all kinds of settings, whether that's at work or that's at home, or even with myself, my own self judgments and patterns and whatnot, to engage with me in that way.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, Sally. Where you started, Amisha, with measurement and quantification, I kind of see that as, there's so much of it going on in our lives these days. There's so many kind of apps that measure everything about you, your sleep, your blood pressure. There's a lot of recording of all our activities and then posting online with things like Strava, and we're just measuring everything about ourselves. And I see it as a kind of tyranny of sorts. It's kind of inherent in the system, and it's a sort of privileging of a certain way of knowing. And I really like what you said, Sally, about centering spirituality. A big part of what spirituality means to me is it is a turning towards different ways of knowing. And I feel that that's really important in what we're talking about how to contribute to a different kind of future. I think that different ways of knowing integral will be fundamental to a livable future for humanity. I think that without us turning towards different ways of knowing, we're not going to make it.
Thanks, Chris and Vanessa and Sally and everyone else that's here and very much part of this circle and this sharing. What's just really stirring for me is this way that we are so obsessed with getting it right. And I was just reflecting on when I was here 7 years ago, if those same 30 people were back here now, like I know a lot of them, they're in my life, and they've all been on like a big journey since then, and we'd be spending our time quite differently. And there's this kind of thing of, judging who we were before and how we did something. And so if I look back at my 20s, for example, where I was on such a change the world mission, and I was driven by, yes, my ego partly wanted to like do something important in the world and make my mark. And yes, I was driven by trauma that I'd experienced in my life that made me see injustice and want to make the world better. But mostly, I was driven by good intentions. Perhaps sometimes I burnt out because I worked too hard, or my anger bled through into something, or I took on way too many projects all at once and wasn't as effective as I could be. I think we have this way of them being like, oh, that's bad. That was bad. And now I'm doing this and it's better, and it's right. And maybe it is and maybe it isn't. And I find myself at this moment where I am, and I don't know if it's being at a different age. I don't know if the world's changed. I don't know if we have access to different things as being important. But I'm so grateful for those that are in a moment in their lives where they're putting their bodies on the line for something, or they're in that space of anger and they're campaigning really hard to make a change happen. We need all of it. And we're all called to be part of it in a different way at a different time in our lives. And if we can go with that rather than be on this constant quest to get it right. And it doesn't help because we're in this culture now that's so in this space of cancelling. And it's been really interesting around Gaza, for example, because it's been really shocking to know all of the people in the public eye that haven't posted anything about Gaza and don't seem to think that that's something they can speak about because maybe it's also going to cost them their jobs and all of that. It's really fascinating what a mess we're in. And you also can't really measure how much someone cares by how many posts they put on social media, especially when there is so much pressure to put posts on to not be cancelled. And I find that actually it makes me just look at Instagram and not be able to post anything because I care about Palestine. My brother used to live there. I've been there. I have slept there. I have met incredible Palestinian people. And just generally, I don't like seeing children being blown up, no matter whose children they are. But I can't post about that every single day because that doesn't also feel genuine to everything else that I'm also doing and everything else that's happening in the world. And then, okay, but then I'm not posting enough about Sudan and then there's this and there's that I haven't done and this. And so we can just get lost in this completely overwhelming, debilitating pressure to try and get it right. And in doing that, we miss the wisdom of what we're actually capable of in any one particular moment. There's a process that's happening through us, that there's something that's in front of us that we're being asked to pay attention to. And what if we have that space to do that, to see what is either showing up in our lives or what's showing up right in front of us, or having that little bit of headspace to kind of feel like, what is the most genuinely meaningful way that I can contribute to this violence that I'm seeing and I don't want to be happening in the world? And therefore, we're not doing it in that way where we're reacting to what we're supposed to do or how we're supposed to get it right, or judging that someone's doing it better than, and someone's not doing it enough, and someone's doing it, oh, but they're doing that too much, and now they're causing all that harm. And then everyone just goes, I don't know what to do. And then we've made it so complicated. And I guess that's what's really alive for me, is that if we're showing up as humans that are a vehicle towards a beautiful future, that we're going to get it wrong, we're going to get in the mess of it, we're going to step in the wrong bit, step in the shit sometimes, literally. Like, we're not going to always get it right, and we also have to listen to there's just this tension, isn't there? It's a dynamic tension of like listening to our own bodies so that we don't burn out or get overwhelmed or spend so much time like trying to take care of something else that we completely neglect, somebody that's really important to us that we couldn't, we didn't notice, or we didn't have the time or the energy. And also working with that tension of, oh, now I've got so overwhelmed and numbed out that all I can do is literally like look at the trees and smell the roses, and it's too much to like take part in anything else, and that doesn't feel balanced anymore. And that maybe those things will all happen within the same day and the same week, and that is part of the work of this time, is to be able to really just keep checking in with ourselves, like, what is it that I can do, that I'm being asked to do, that is here for me to do in this moment? And that somehow has become like really hard, like so much harder than it sounds. But it is so much around intention. And we also just don't know the harm that we cause either. And I feel like all we can do is, try and pay a little bit of attention and apologize when we feel like we might have got it wrong, and give other people space to apologize when they feel like they might have got it wrong. We were having a whole conversation today about eggs and caged hen eggs versus local eggs. But then somebody said, but we don't know where the nuts that we've been eating have come from. And what if by not paying attention to the onions, we've like missed the most important thing in the whole sphere? And we'll never know. So today in this moment, as I look out onto these trees and I see all these roses that are flowering just for these few weeks, one of the ways to contribute feels like going and smelling the roses and honoring that they're here in this moment. Yeah, thank you to all of you for sharing and for coming and being part of this time that we're sharing, because I do feel like so much of it happens when we're together, and of course a lot of it happens when we're alone. so we're always being invited to find that balance for ourselves. To close, we're going to share a song that is one of the songs that we've been singing here, and we don't know the original source of this song. So if you do, let us know. I can feel my heart drum beating to the rhythm of the freedom song. If I say yes to the beat in me, I will set my spirit free. I can feel my heart drum beating to the rhythm of the freedom song. When I say yes to the beat in me, I can set my spirit free. I can feel my heart drum beating to the rhythm of the freedom song.
When I say yes to the beat in me, I will set my spirit free. I can feel my heart drum beating to the rhythm of the freedom song. When I say yes to the beat in me, I will set my spirit free. I can feel my heart drum beating to the rhythm of the freedom song. When I say yes to the beat in me, I will set my spirit free.
And hopefully, as each of us sets our spirit free, the collective spirit will be set free, but we will never know. Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on allthatweare.org. We give space to our guests to share their perspective without debating it or fact-checking, as this approach allows for deep, unedited conversations from the heart. We trust your discernment and wisdom to take what is useful and challenge what isn't in your own understanding. We offer spaces for discussion and integration in our membership community, which we would love for you to join. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible by you, our beautiful community. If you loved this and would like to connect more deeply with us, please join our membership. You choose what you contribute based on our sliding scale, and you become a patron whose support makes this podcast happen, as well as receiving access to a library of many resources and invitations to nourishing events. Please also hit subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen so others can find us. This podcast is made by an all-female global team. Me, Amisha Gadiali, producer and host, Anna Greta Folderbach, who crafts the words that accompany each episode, and Mary Chan, who edits the sound so skillfully. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. It invites the full power of the more than human world, nature, the unseen, our ancestors, and our future generations. It reminds us that we never exist in silo, through borders, timelines, or polarity, that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.